Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to our press conference. We're here today to talk about a case that we have here at CAIR Chicago, the case of the Shipley family and United Airlines. We are representing the Shipley family as CAIR Chicago. Some details on the story. The Shipley family, composed of the father, mother, and 3 young children, boarded a United Airlines flight from Chicago to Washington, D.C. on March 20th for spring break, and they sat in their seats, they buckled themselves in, everything was fine, attendants went through the aisles, looked at them, everything was fine. Then the father motioned over to one of the attendants and asked if he could obtain the shoulder strap for his baby. When the attendant said he didn't know what he was talking about, he proceeded to show him on his phone the United Airlines website that explained what that was. He still didn't know what it was, and then walked away. Then another flight attendant later came and told the mother, who was seated next to the baby, that the baby could not be on a booster seat. She didn't say to remove the booster seat, and the mother simply inquired, "Is it safer with or without?" She didn't receive a response. Instead, rather rudely, the attendant said, "I'm not going to argue with you," and walked away without answering her question. The mother proceeded to remove the booster seat anyway. Then someone else came, another flight attendant, and said that they needed to leave the flight, they needed to board off. They asked them why, and they began to film this portion of the events. That's what you may have seen on the video on Facebook. The father asked for the reason, the mother asked whether it was just discrimination, because the answer was, because it's my decision. That's what the flight attendant said. And the mother later stated that they felt humiliated, singled out, and harassed by the flight attendants for no particular reason. The mother does wear a hijab, a headscarf, and she wonders whether she would have been singled out for this kind of treatment if she was a white person without a headscarf. And when they asked for a reason, later on he told them it was for security. And as they exited the plane, which they agreed to do because they were asked to do it, and because they didn't want to further inconvenience and scare and traumatize their children beyond the trauma they had already experienced, they were told by the captain on the way out that this was his decision. He mentioned something about the Hudson River flight and said that some passengers wanted to open the emergency door when they were instructed not to. And they said, "What does this have to do with us?" And he said, "You have to follow orders, big or small, from flight attendants," to which they responded, "We in fact did remove the booster seat." And he apologized and he moved on to a different flight, being incredibly inconvenienced, humiliated, and so on. They did not feel comfortable flying back on the same airline, United Airlines, after the experience they went through. They paid for a different flight to come home, and they had to incur additional hotel expenses in order to make that second flight. What we are seeing here is a situation where the word security is flashed as an alibi for any mistreatment of a passenger. It's not the first time we've seen this happen. We've seen Muslim passengers thrown off planes because they're speaking in Arabic, and then we were told security. We've seen them taken off planes because they were watching news on their iPhone when it was okay to do so, and we were told security. They were removed because other passengers didn't feel comfortable being in the same flight with them. We were told for security. And now we have a family of 5 removed from a flight for asking a couple of questions about security, mind you. This is the irony. All the mother attempted to do was to ask very valid, very professional questions that the attendants ought to have answered and explained. And the simple question was, is it safe for my baby with the booster or without? And instead, she was told, "I'm not going to argue with you," and moved on, and the mother complied nonetheless. So because of the parents and the family's interest in security for themselves, they were taken off the flight apparently and then told it's for security reasons, which we find to be horrendous. At this point, we've sent a demand letter to United Airlines requesting that they remedy the situation appropriately for the family and ensure that this does not happen again for future passengers. There are 4 things we've requested. One is disciplinary measures against the flight attendants in question. 2 is culture sensitivity training for United Airlines attendants. 3, we ask for a formal apology for the family. and for the appropriate compensation for the duress experienced by the family and all the related expenses that came out of this inconvenience. We have not yet received a response. This letter was sent today, so we've given them 7 days to respond to it, and then we'll proceed from there. Thank you.
So, to your knowledge, this just started with a booster seat that the little girl or boy or child wasn't supposed to have. They just wanted the kid. What was it really about? An extra strap? That's how it all started. It was just something.
It was honestly, I don't have the answer. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. They asked very normal questions within the context that you would imagine a passenger can ask a question in. When told you can't have this booster seat, she simply wondered, so is it safer with or without? A simple answer and an explanation would have been sufficient. We would have moved on. It wasn't a situation where they were fighting and creating havoc and chaos on the flight and they had to be removed. This was very calm, very appropriate questions addressed in context to the discussion, and instead it was elevated by the attendants exclusively, unilaterally, to the point of booting the family on the flight.
And to your knowledge, no one else was kicked off the flight, even though they were talking about other things happening?
No, nobody else was taken off the flight, and there were, I should mention, multiple witnesses who corroborate the details of this story.
The father's story.
Of the family's story. And even as the story was unfolding, several passengers who were in the proximity of the events joined in the conversation and told the attendants they did nothing wrong. Why are we removing them? Someone else said she removed the booster seat.
And you allude to this, but how often does this happen? And what you've seen here just in Chicago?
Unfortunately, this is not the first incident that we've had reported to our office regarding United Airlines and the behavior of attendants towards members of our community for whatever reason. But there was, before that, if you recall, the well-publicized story of the Muslim woman from Northwestern University who requested a can of Diet Coke and it was open, and she requested a closed one and she was told you can't have it because you use it as a weapon, even though the person next to her received a closed can of beer, and the trauma that she experienced thereafter. So, and there are other incidents as well. Not just United, but other airlines. But with United, we've had these incidents. And we're asking United to address this particular incident and the general trend that we've seen so that it doesn't happen again.
It's going to be obvious, but is it happening more and more? But it's staying, since the days of 9/11, what do you see as far as these kind of incidents happening? Is it happening more?
We've seen an uptick in these incidents over the last year. And one can speculate as to the reasons. The jumpy nature that many Americans are experiencing as a result of what's in the news, what's in the headlines, what kind of rhetoric that's out there. But this to me was abnormal behavior, an abnormal response to a perfectly legitimate question. The mother sought advice. She wasn't arguing, she wasn't bantering, she wasn't acting inappropriately. She sought advice in terms of security and safety for her young child, which is precisely what you would do or I would do and anybody would do. And a simple conversation, human to human, professional, respectful, would have alleviated the situation and she would have complied. As a matter of fact, she did anyway. But instead, it was immediately, inappropriately elevated and escalated to the point of removing them from the flight for no apparent reason.
And you're asking for an apology and obviously some things that United needs to do. But does the family personally want anything else but an apology? Are they asking for any kind of
The four things that we're requesting are it's not only CAIR Chicago's request, but actually the family's request that we are representing. And these are the four things I mentioned. In addition to the formal apology, the sensitivity training for the staff, disciplinary measures for those involved in the incident, and the appropriate financial compensation for the duress and the expenses incurred.
Yeah, United didn't do anything to help them get a new flight. They got a different airline, you said, right?
No, they got a different flight.
Okay.
They were asked, as they were moved off, they had boarding passes they were given boarding passes for a different flight. So, but that's not the point. The point is coming back on the return leg. They were not comfortable for obvious reasons, going through the same traumatic experience, or the same traumatic airline for them. And they opted for a different flight to avoid these difficult memories for the family. So they incurred all those costs, as well as the hotel that they had to take.
Are they from Chicago or the suburbs or
They're
what?
from the Chicago suburbs,
Can you say what suburb?
I believe Lombard.
Lombard? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.